So you're saying that none of this happened? That,
No, I'm saying it was inaccurate.
okay. How many times did President Numps appear in the Epstein files? More than 100? More than 1,000?
No, and what we've been able to release is what we've been legally able to release, and that has
No,
been
that's not the
provided to
question. I
public.
asked you, how many times did the president's name appear?
I don't know.
Just minutes before the Senate hearing was gavelled back into session, a sealed document, marked internal and time-stamped 8:42 a.m., was placed on the witness table. It wasn't listed on the public agenda. It wasn't included in the distributed exhibits. And it wasn't something Kash Patel was expecting to see. What happened next didn't just shift the tone of the room. It altered the balance of power inside it. The chamber lights were harsh, surgical. Staffers lined the walls. Reporters leaned forward in their seats, pens frozen above notepads. The air carried that familiar Capitol stillness, the kind that feels calm until it suddenly isn't. Representative Zoe Lofgren sat upright, hands folded neatly over a thin folder that hadn't been there minutes earlier. Across from her, Kash Patel adjusted his microphone. Confident. Relaxed. Ready. At least that's how it appeared. But the document between them had already changed the geometry of the room. And everyone in that chamber, whether they understood it yet or not, was about to feel it. The gavel struck once. The chair recognized Representative Lofgren. No raised voice. No theatrics. Just precision. Mr. Patel, she began calmly, I'd like to clarify a timeline. Simple. Controlled. Unthreatening. The kind of opening that invites confidence. Patel nodded. Of course. She continued. On October 14th, you testified that you had no prior knowledge of internal file transfers connected to the Epstein document review process. Is that correct? Yes, Patel replied evenly. That is correct. No hesitation. No visible discomfort. Reporters scribbled. Cameras clicked. It sounded routine. But that wasn't the moment that changed everything. Because Lofgren hadn't yet touched the folder. She waited. 3 seconds. Long enough for the room to exhale. Then she slid the document forward. Not dramatically. Just enough. A thin stack. White. Official seal visible at the top. And stamped across the first page. Internal access log, restricted distribution. The silence thickened. Mr. Patel, she said softly, this document reflects an authorization code assigned to your credentials at 9:17 p.m. the evening before those file transfers occurred. Patel didn't move at first. Then he leaned slightly forward. Subtle. Almost imperceptible. But the posture changed. The room felt it. I'm not aware of that document, he replied carefully. Lofgren nodded once. That's precisely why I'd like to discuss it. This wasn't improvisation. This was architecture. Lofgren had built something. And now she was inviting Patel to step inside it. She didn't accuse. She didn't escalate. She asked. Can you explain why your authorization code appears in this restricted access log? Patel shifted in his seat. I can't verify the authenticity of that document without reviewing it in detail. Measured. Cautious. Still composed. But then she turned the page. Projected onto the screen behind them appeared a timestamp. October 13th. 9:17 and 43 seconds p.m. User credential, KP 4471. Access node, Secure Archive Terminal 3. Duration, 12 minutes, 14 seconds. The room stopped breathing. Because this wasn't vague. It wasn't speculative. It was forensic. And it was specific. Lofgren didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. The credentials listed here, she continued, match your assigned internal access code, correct? Patel's jaw tightened. That appears to be what the document suggests. Is it your code? A pause. Yes. The first fracture. Small. But real. And everyone heard it. But that wasn't the trap. Not yet. Because Lofgren wasn't building toward access. She was building toward contradiction. She flipped to page 3. An attachment. File transfer summary. 5 file names listed. Redacted in the public version. Not redacted here. She read one aloud. Client_list_revision_final. Another. Visitor_log_archive_edited. A third. Correspondence_index_supplement. The words hung in the air like evidence already admitted. Patel inhaled slowly. I don't recall those specific file names. And that's when the room shifted. Because memory lapses are one thing. But timestamps are another. Lofgren leaned slightly closer to her microphone. Mr. Patel, 12 minutes and 14 seconds is not an accidental click. The silence was surgical. She continued. You testified under oath that you had no knowledge of internal file transfers. Yet this log shows your credentials accessing and modifying files connected to that review process the night before public release. She let that settle. Then added, almost gently. Help us understand the discrepancy. This was the trap. Simple question. Confident denial. Unexpected evidence. Direct contradiction. And the exit doors were closing. Patel cleared his throat. I would need to review the chain of custody on that document. Its possible credentials were accessed without my direct involvement. A defense. Technical. Plausible. But thin. Lofgren didn't argue. She simply reached for a second document. Because one document suggests. 2 documents confirm. Projected behind them. Security camera still, archive terminal 3. Timestamp, 9:18 p.m. Image slightly grainy. But clear enough. A figure seated at the terminal. Profile visible. Identifiable. Patel didn't look back at the screen. He didn't need to. The room already had. And the shift was audible. Whispers along the back row. Attorneys leaning toward one another. A reporter's pen dropped. Lofgren spoke quietly. Is that you at Secure Archive Terminal 3, Mr. Patel? The calm before the storm. He looked up at the screen. Briefly. Then forward again. It appears to resemble me. Resemble. A careful word. Chosen deliberately. But the trap was already sealed. Because resemblance paired with credential logs paired with sworn testimony doesn't equal confusion. It equals conflict. But that still wasn't the moment that changed everything. Because Lofgren hadn't yet addressed what those files contained. She turned another page. Mr. Patel, she said, voice steady, are you aware that the file labeled visitor_log_archive_edited was altered between 9:21 and 9:29 p.m. that evening? Patel's hands, resting on the table, tightened slightly. I'm not aware of any alterations. She nodded. Let me assist. The screen changed. Side-by-side comparison. Original log. Revised log. 3 entries missing. 3 names. Gone. The room didn't gasp. It didn't need to. The absence was louder than any reaction. This revision occurred under your active session, Lofgren said. Measured. Forensic. Irrefutable. Patel's composure thinned. I did not delete any names, he responded. Not calmly now. Firmly. But firmness isn't proof. And Lofgren had more. Because she hadn't just brought access logs. She'd brought authorization codes. Mr. Patel, she continued, the system requires a secondary confirmation to finalize edits. That confirmation uses a personal security phrase. She paused. The confirmation phrase entered at 9:28 p.m. matches the encrypted phrase assigned to your credentials. Silence. Pure. Heavy. Inevitable. The trap had become a box. And the walls were visible. Patel's attorney leaned forward, whispering urgently. Patel nodded once. Then spoke. I categorically deny intentionally altering any official logs. Intentional. A narrowing of language. And Lofgren heard it. So you're suggesting it was accidental? A beat. I'm suggesting the context matters. But context doesn't erase timestamps. The chair attempted to restore order as murmurs grew. Lofgren didn't look away. She didn't blink. Because this wasn't anger. This was precision. Mr. Patel, she said softly, were you instructed to modify those logs? The question landed like a weight. Not loud. Not dramatic. But seismic. Patel hesitated. For the first time. A visible pause. Eyes flicking toward counsel. Then back. I was not instructed to delete any names. Delete. He chose the word. Not Lofgren. And the room caught it. Because she hadn't said delete. She'd said modify. And that difference mattered. But the real bomb hadn't dropped yet. Because Lofgren had one more document. Thicker. Stamped confidential. She lifted it slowly. This, she said, is an internal directive circulated 3 days prior to those edits. The screen displayed the header. Distribution list, limited. Subject line, pre-release file integrity review. Her finger traced a line. Paragraph 4 instructs designated personnel to standardize visitor entries in preparation for public disclosure. Standardize. A sterile word. But beneath it? Removals. Revisions. Redactions. And listed among designated personnel? Initials. KP. The room froze. Not metaphorically. Physically. Chairs still. Breaths held. The weight of inevitability settled. Were you a designated reviewer under this directive? Lofgren asked. Patel's face had lost color. Not dramatically. But enough. Yes, he answered. And did you standardize entries? I reviewed entries. But did you remove names? Silence. Microphones humming. Camera shutters quiet. The longest 3 seconds of the hearing. I followed procedural guidance, Patel finally said. There it was. Not denial. Not confirmation. But surrender to ambiguity. And that's when the collapse became visible. Not explosive. Gradual. Like a structure realizing its foundation is compromised. Lofgren leaned back slightly. Not in triumph. In completion. Mr. Patel, she said calmly, you testified under oath that you had no knowledge of file transfers connected to this review. The access log, security footage, edit history, and internal directive contradict that testimony. She let the words breathe. Would you like to revise your statement? A final opening. A narrow exit. Patel swallowed. His attorney whispered again. But whispers don't change records. I would like the opportunity to review all materials before amending any prior testimony. It wasn't defiance. It wasn't clarity. It was delay. And delay, in that moment, felt like concession. But the hearing wasn't over. Because consequences extend beyond confession. Reporters were already typing. Phones lighting up. Headlines forming before the gavel could fall. The chair called for order. Lofgren closed the folder. Deliberate. Complete. No raised voice. No celebration. Just documentation entered into the record. Outside that chamber, the ripple began immediately. Legal analysts questioned the integrity of prior statements. Ethics committees signaled review. Oversight panels requested expanded subpoenas. Because this wasn't about 3 missing names anymore. It was about sworn testimony. About access. About authority exercised in private and denied in public. And institutions don't absorb that quietly. Inside the room, Patel remained seated for a moment after adjournment. Still. Composed in posture. But altered. Because composure under scrutiny is one thing. Composure under contradiction is another. Staff moved around him. Attorneys gathered documents. Cameras lingered longer than usual. Not hunting spectacle. Capturing aftermath. Moments earlier, this had been a routine oversight session. Now it felt historic. Because the power dynamic had shifted. The question wasn't whether files were accessed. They were. The question wasn't whether edits occurred. They did. The question was why sworn testimony failed to reflect that reality. And that question doesn't disappear when the microphones turn off. In the days that followed, formal requests were filed. Independent review panels convened. Legal scholars dissected transcript language. The phrase, standardize entries, became central. So did 9:17 p.m. So did 12 minutes and 14 seconds. Precision matters. Because precision builds inevitability. And inevitability builds consequence. This wasn't a shouting match. It wasn't chaos. It was something more dangerous. Controlled exposure. Methodical contradiction. Public record meeting private action. And when those two collide under oath, history takes notes. Just minutes before that document appeared on the witness table, the hearing was procedural, routine, predictable. But once it was placed there, once the timestamps were read, once the screen illuminated those missing names, the trajectory changed. Not explosively. Irreversibly. Because power doesn't collapse in a single shout. It erodes under evidence. And in that chamber, under those lights, with cameras fixed and silence amplifying every pause, evidence did what confrontation alone never could. It cornered. And in the quiet that followed, something shifted. Not just in the room, but in the record. And records, unlike testimony, don't forget.